Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We'll just wait for some other few persons to join in so we can get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We'll just So we should be starting in about 5 minutes time. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Legal Lunch and Learn session part 2. In the previous one, we had a lot to learn and we got quality information from our host, and she's here again for us today. Thank you all for taking the time out from your day to join us. We truly appreciate your presence. My name is Ogosa, and I will be the host for this session from Ruth House, and I'll be your facilitator for today. Today's conversation is focused on just helping every one of us here better understand some important legal topics around family property division and financial considerations, especially in ways that are practical and easy to follow. We understand that these topics can be very, very overwhelming, and particularly for individuals who may be navigating the legal system right now in Canada. So our goal today is to create a space where we can learn, we can ask all the questions that we have, and then we can gain clarity. So please, I will advise that we make use of the chat box to just put in your questions while we go through the session. And once I see your questions, I will be happy and glad to bring it to her notice. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Barrister Lucy, always available for us. Barrister Lucy is a legal professional with experience in family law. She's a senior associate and managing lawyer of family law at Osuji and Smith. She's a board chair and also a philanthropist. And we are very glad because anytime we call on her, she's always available to, to come be with us and answer our questions. So feel free to ask all of the questions that you have today, and we'll be sure that you will get quality answers and clarity. So today, Barrister Lucy will be guiding us through key topics, including property division, financial disclosure, pensions, investments, exemptions, and what to do in situations where assets may be concealed. So I would just go about asking questions where I expect that if you have one or two troubling questions, you put it in there and I will, champion it for you. But I'll go ahead and ask her some of the questions. So basically the last time we had our conversation, I remember we talked about 50-50 wealth resources distribution at the point of property division. We also talked about if even if you're not married and you have a partner that's been with you for over 3 years, the person is entitled to also 50-50% division of resources, right? And we talked about full disclosure. It was a very rich session. So for today, I want us to look into pension and investments, right? For couples who have pensions and also have investments outside of their income, monthly income. So for someone unfamiliar with the financial system, how should they approach pensions and investments at the point of separation?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again so much to Ruth's House for another opportunity to share information and to interact with the community. Thank you, Gosa, for coordinating this. And to everybody who is present today, you are welcome. It's a good thing that you created some time to be here. Without you, we will not function or conduct this process, adequately. So thank you for taking our time. My name is Lucy Mewanu. So based on that question, one thing I would like to clarify first in relation to your previous comment is that when it comes to sharing property, there is no automatic rule of 50-50, which is why it's always advisable to speak to a lawyer at the time when you separate, in order to determine what your options will be and what structure to take in terms of addressing property based on the duration of your marriage, contributions from both parties, and the different roles that each party played during the relationship and the marriage. That is the same for those who are not married as well, but are in a common law relationship. The duration of a marriage will impact whether it's 50-50 equalization or whether there are different options to use in terms of approaching property division, right? It's a case-by-case thing. Now, your question was in relation to investments and pensions, and how parties could address it upon separation.
Yeah.
All of those things are part of property division. But then when it comes to dividing property, the first thing we need to do is to compile. Compiling property means that by using the notice to disclose template, which is provided on the court website, and most lawyers have access to it, we're compiling the client's financials, so personal, corporate, as applicable. And then there is a document to that template called Schedule A. It's a statement of incomes, assets, and liabilities. It has to be done for both sides, and it has different columns. The columns for corporation assets, the column for investments and pensions, registered assets, non-registered assets, all of those things, real property, vehicle, bank accounts. Once we've compiled all, then we have to tackle property as a general thing. You cannot piecemeal property items. We don't piecemeal it, meaning that when the parties are separating, we add up everything that they have, whether jointly and separately. We compile onto a property chart, husband's column, wife's column, assets, liabilities. The assets are divided into registered and non-registered assets, right? So non-registered assets are things that are not investments and stuff like that. I mean, taxable assets, taxable and non-taxable. So once we've compiled all of those things, Then we've add the values. We also put the acquisition dates. Those things are very important because if, say, you own a property you bought it in 2010, it's your house, you're living in it, and then you got married in 2020, it means that you have 10 years of value that is not subject to your relationship and marriage, right?
Yeah.
And that's where exemptions start coming in, which is why knowing the date of acquisition is very important. We'll go back to the date that you bought it to check what the value was. And then we now look at any accruement in terms of that value. That's the increase in the value.
Yeah.
And that's the same approach for investments and stocks and mutual funds and pension. If you start working, with your company in 2010 again, but then you got married in 2020, there is no way your spouse or the person you're with is going to have any entitlement to the 10 years that precedes your marriage. So that 10-year value is going to be exempt. When it comes to pensions, they are dealt with by independent administrators, right? Not lawyers, because lawyers or the courts don't control the pension plans. What the lawyers would do is calculate the period of the marriage, determine when you started working for that company, and then we're going to write to the company. The client can do that on their own. Reach out to that pension administrator and say, can you please provide me with a statement of my pension? On that statement, can you please provide me with how much amount built up during this set time? So they will specify the time of the relationship to know exactly what amount applied to that period. The pension administrator is the one who fixes all of that. The lawyers don't do it because we don't have access to the money. And as we know, pension is not readily available to be cashed out, right?
Yeah.
Just like most investments, they are there, but you cannot get them right away. When you get the statement from the pension person, the lawyers will now determine what value is divisible between the parties. However, that money is not there for you to take out because it's something that is based on conditions and matures at a certain time.
Yeah.
And investments like TFSA, RSPs, stocks, they're also subject to those conditions, right? And they are subject to taxes too, which means that the value that you see is not the entire value that is available to divide. So at this point, the first thing we're doing is we kind of approximate taxes. Most times it's between 23 to 25% to go towards taxes. And once we do that, we now remove the implied tax amount from the pension total, which is applicable for that marriage period. And then we divide the rest. Another way to go about it is to just use both amounts at face value and then transfer to the wife or the husband by directing the pension person to do a rollover. What they'll do is the pensioner will decide on what process works best for them. All they need is direction as to what period is applicable, which is the period of the relationship. They do all the calculations. They have their internal processes. The lawyers don't do calculations for you. We just get an estimated value. So whatever you get from the pension people is what you get. You can receive that money as a lira, which is the locked in retirement save account. If you do have one, they can do a rollover to you, but you won't have access to it right away. You can make a decision to that about that later. But when it comes to like stocks or RSPs, TFSAs and stuff, we have the T20, it's called T2022 form. It's on the Government of Canada website. If you Google that document, it's a rollover form. You can transfer assets, so taxable assets between spouses. And that's how you save on taxes. Because if the person had an RSP of 500,000 and they are supposed to give you, let's say 250, because the full RSP was accrued during your relationship, if they go and cash out that RSP, you guys will lose money.
Mm.
The RSP hasn't matured. The taxes will be over the roof, which means that it's not, I mean, a gain to either of you. So
Yeah.
what we would do is we'll complete that form or help the parties to complete that T2022 form, and then submit it to each of the RSP holders, whether it's Manulife or TD or whatever bank they have the RSP account with. If they don't have it, they have to create one. Once the rollover document is provided to each, holder, we'll provide a copy of any court document that is directing on that transfer. Then the banks or the institutions will do the transfer in the form of a rollover, which means that they will carry it to one account to avoid taxes. But when you cash it out in the future, then you will pay those taxes,
Oh,
right? But at the time of dividing, we are using approximate values, we are estimating taxes, we're looking at any other deductions that could be applicable in order to determine what value is divisible and which one remains.
okay.
Yeah, but it's like that. You have to compile
Yeah.
before you divide. Yeah.
Yeah, at least it's on the table. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
yeah,
Oh
it's on the
yeah.
table. I think that's what's very important.
Yeah. So property is very broad. And most times when people don't know that certain items constitute as property to be divided, they miss out on, which is why again it's very important to speak to a lawyer, even for 20 minutes. When you look at the document is called Notice to Disclose. It's a document that is available even on Google. If you Google it, it will take you to the court website. That document is so detailed. It provides you with all the categories of property that are applicable to a separation and a divorce, bank accounts, and even like this pair of earring that you're wearing is
I
subject to
was gonna get
division.
there.
Yeah, everything is subject to division. We see it in the movies and we think it's a joke when somebody say, "Oh, let's divide your wedding ring, the value of it." No, it's not a joke. It's actually real. We look at that. You have the jewelry section, you have gold, you have the safety deposit box content, you have all of those things that form part of property. Anything that you own, which is considered an asset
Yeah.
or a liability to you, is part of property.
Yeah, well, okay. I was going to ask those questions, but you just covered a whole lot. But I get that I own it, right?
Mhm.
But what if it was a gift from my partner? It was a gift. So is this going to be on the table?
So you're asking where one party gives the other person
Yes.
something during the
Yes.
relationship
We
or the
talk about
marriage?
gold, we talk about
Mhm.
jewelries and all of those stuff.
Yeah.
Is this still going to be on the table?
Well, gifts are that disputable, meaning that if the husband gives the wife something during the relationship, the wife can claim an exemption to it.
Okay.
Meaning that when the parties are starting the divorce process, if they file the commencement document, so the statement of claim for divorce, another person is filing a statement of um, defense, the person who wants to keep that property item away from being divided or aside has to claim an exemption. If that exemption is determined or established, then that property is not divided,
Okay.
which is why everything must be compiled at first instance for each party to know exactly what the other person has before they start claiming any exemptions. Even if you're claiming an exemption to something, you have to still disclose it. The
Mm,
obligation to disclose doesn't it's not a waiver of it involves exemption. So even if you own a piece of land with your grandparents, you have to include that in your disclosure because it belongs to you partly, right? So it
yeah.
comes with your name or comes to your name, and that has to be known to the other person or has to be known to all parties that are dealing with. And then when it comes to gifts, most times and from experience, I've seen that each party keeps their gifts, particularly the gifts that they got from each other or gifts that they got from third parties. If say on the wedding day or during the marriage ceremonies and stuff like that, or over time, the husband was gifted things on the wedding day that pertains only to the husband, that's a gift to him. If the wife got gifts that are to her, then those are her gifts. But the gifts have to be clear that it was to one person. We've had times when, or situations where the father-in-law gave the couple 20K. And let's go with the wife's father. And the wife is like, oh, that money is a gift because it came from my father. No, we're looking at what was the intention of the gift?
Oh, yes.
Was it meant for you alone or for you
both.
as a couple?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was meant for the couple, then it's not yours. It has to be specific, right? Yeah. So
Okay,
if it's a gift that is determined to belong to one person and it was very specified, then that person will claim an exemption to it and they're likely to get that removed from the property division process.
Okay, I think that's very clear. So far what you've said is everything is on the table.
Yeah.
Everything is on the table. Investments, all sort of income, every money generated is on the table. But when it comes to gifts, it should be disclosed, even if there are exemptions.
Yeah.
Everything should be disclosed.
Yeah.
So that will lead me to the other question. We get these questions from clients when they're about to start up the process of the whole separation. And everybody is always eager to talk about property division. So what are the very first steps? If anybody knows that, oh, I think I'm moving to the point where I cannot do anymore with this marriage and I'm moving to the point of separation, what are those documents? What are those things that people need to gather, to help them with property division?
Okay. Now, I'm not sure if I'm able to share a document on here, but do you think I'm able to share something
You
in the
should.
chat? Let me
Yes, you
see.
should. Yeah, you should.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I've uploaded a document, which is the notice to disclose template. And are you able to share that document on your screen? Because that is exactly what we'll use. There is no two-way about it.
I think
It's
everyone here can actually just download it.
Yeah, I put it in the chat. So when you look at the notice to disclose document, it's prepared on a template by the court system, and it has 18 items, right? In addition to that, it has the Schedule A, which is the list of property and debts, like I was explaining. It's a lot of things. If we have to go through each of them, it's going to take a year. But that is the most detailed document that you can use to compile. And each party needs to use that template to compile that disclosure. Most times when you go to the courtroom, you hear lawyers or judges say items 1 to 16 of disclosure. That's the document that we're referring to. That is the template that we use. All of it will not apply to one person, but whatever is applicable to a party, it's going to be checked off and it's going to be provided to the other side. When you compile your property items, you have to make sure that you are taking your time. When people are going through or about going through a separation, it's very overwhelming, right? We cannot deny that. Particularly if there are children, if it was a long-term relationship. Imagine spending 30 years together and then you have to separate and start all over. And then at that point also, depending on the circumstances, the financial circumstances of each party, it could kind of blind their judgment or overwhelm them, which is why sometimes they don't know what to do. They don't know what to compile. They don't know where to start. Speak to somebody. Let that person give you a head start. But if you're thinking that a separation could be in the nearest future. Based on the circumstances of your marriage or your relationship, start looking at, first of all, your tax filings. That's number one. If you're a T4 employee, it's easy to know what your tax filings were for the past years that you've been together. So income tax returns, the T1, your notices of assessments, bank account statements. So note down all your bank accounts that you've owned, compile the statements, your credit cards and the statements, closed or existing. If it was a long-term marriage and you guys have to deal with property, you are going back to day one. It's very frustrating, but that's the requirement. Because for you to determine whether property division or for you to determine a fair process of dividing property, you have to go back to the beginning of the marriage or the relationship. If the parties were together, living together before they got married, you're starting from day one. What did they own? We have an affidavit of records. It's a document that we also compile. We go back to the start. When did they start living together? What did you own as bank accounts? We list all of them. What properties have you bought over that time? What have you sold over that time? What did you do with the money? If you saved it or invested it, what investments? We go by what vehicles did you own? Where are they now? Did you sell them? What did you use with the money? Imagine someone being married for 30 years or 40 years or even 20 years, and the husband is the one who is in control of the finances. It means that the wife is unlikely to have any insight or involvement in running those things.
Yeah.
Now that they're separating, she doesn't know what properties he bought over time, how he dealt with the cars that they were driving, the bank accounts. She just knows that one was open, one was closed. She might not even know that he had certain bank accounts. So she's like, he's been using the marital money and she doesn't even know. He's just been doing whatever he wants. Because most spouses don't think they should discuss finances with the other person, but you should be discussing it. Because at the end of the day, it belongs to you both, and whatever consequences or negative consequences come out of bad investments, it is both parties' responsibility. Just understanding the fact that when I get money and I'm married, it's both our money. It's not your money. It's not my money. It's both monies, right? If you're buying a property where you're married, whether it's for investment or you're gifting it to somebody, the other person must know, right? If you're opening an account, the other person should be aware of. Most people find out when they separate that the husband had 50 accounts before, and he was just moving money from here to Colombia to India. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know he had all of this money. I had no idea. Right? And then we have to now spend a lot of hours and a lot of dollars to trace it. And then start asking the husband the question, when did you open this account? How much was there? Why did you send 50,000 to Nigeria? Why did you send 100,000 to India? Who was the money going to? But then you're spending money to know things that you should have known from the beginning, or you should have made an effort to know. And I'm not saying that it's easy to become involved in what the other person is doing, because there are different dynamics in the relationship, and of course, different social factors that affects how, both parties interact, but it's important to know. Most people have ended up with 100,000 debt, and they don't know how it came about. But they are responsible for it because it's family debt, right? Now, that document I shared is your best bet. For people who have businesses, there is additional disclosure that is required for them. We have Cunningham disclosure. It goes beyond what is listed here. It goes into the expenses. When you look at the financial statements of a company, it's done every year, just like you file your taxes. The corporation files taxes as well. But when it comes to corporations, they don't just file taxes in terms of, notice of assessments, and they have the T2 for dividends and stuff like that, and T5 for dividends, and then T2 for the corporate filing itself. That's not just all. For personal, it's okay. But corporations also do financial statements, budget and expenses, right? For every year. They have day-to-day expenses of how the money came in, where it went to. Everybody needs to know that. So if you own a corporation, you need to provide those details. If we're looking at the corporate expenses and you're paying 50,000 to an employee whose name is not on the list, who is
Mm.
that employee,
Yeah.
right? If you say you were buying supplies for 100,000, but your business is one kabo business, it doesn't make sense. It's not adding up, right? Which means that you were kind of dissipating money somehow and
Yeah.
using it for your own personal gain. So we go back and we trace all of those things. Financial disclosure is the most intense aspect of separation and divorce process,
It has.
especially for long-term marriages. Short-term marriages is easier.
Mm.
Yeah, if that T4 employees, meaning that they have just the salaries, it's easier as well. But then depending on how much you have accumulated over the marriage, it takes more work to compile.
Yeah. So if I hear you clearly, you're saying let's normalize being part of, having those conversations when it comes to finances in the home.
Yeah.
Let's normalize it. It's not a one-man affair.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, would you not want to get to the other side? But life takes us to different turns. And so
Mm.
when it gets to the point of separation, divorce, these conversations are conversations that must take place.
Yeah.
Yes, one of the very first things we must do is to be aware. If we're not aware, then we start losing money at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
For those persons who are just joining us, you're welcome. Thank you for joining in. You can type in your questions in the chat box. Just let us know one or two questions that is bothering you or you want to find out for yourself, for a friend, for a family member. And we have the best person right now who is very capable and knowledgeable to provide us those answers. So, from what you've also said, can you give us like two or three things that someone should do immediately after a separation as pertaining to what we're discussing?
If you haven't separated yet, but you feel like things are getting to that direction or you're beginning to have that conversation, again, look at your tax returns for the past years, depending on how long you've been married for. Take a template that I've provided. It's a good guide. That's the way to go. You cannot deviate from it, so you might as well use it. It will tell you exactly what to look for. If you have a direction document like this, you can't miss anything. Um, Real estate, list all your real estate that you own, the dates that you purchased them, the values of them, right? Past and current values. Look at the vehicles. And then look at financial assets, so registered and non-registered, or taxable and non-taxable. Start applying for statements. If it's your pension and you do have pension, apply for a statement because that could take up to 6 weeks for you to get it, 6 to 8 weeks. Then start looking at other items as well. Look at the household goods, the things in your house, and start thinking of what you want to keep for yourself and what you can let go, what you guys could be donating, just preparing ahead of time. And then if the house is owned, your family home, if it's owned, then you have to start thinking about that as well. Is your position that it should be sold when you guys separate? Or is it something that you're thinking you want the other person to buy out your interest in the home because you're going to move out? Or are you thinking they should move out? Right?
Yeah.
Uh, that you have to start planning that discussion in your head. When you talk to the other person, those are the things that you'll be discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've seen which works is the parties that have a discussion about the separation, no matter how hard it could be, they have an easier way forward to go through to the end of the divorce process.
Mm-hmm.
Because when parties talk, yes, tension is there, but sometimes they could be very real to themselves and say, I know this is not working. It's not been working for many years now, right? Can we just have a mature discussion so that we don't spend thousands of dollars and time kind of fighting each other? The parties are best, they're in the best position to determine what they own, to know exactly what the values are, and how they want to share it. If they make those fundamental things, or they have those fundamental agreements, they take it to lawyers, and the lawyers can now guide them on how to put it on paper. But if, say, the separation ended in, or the separation was caused by, say, family violence, you don't have that opportunity, of course,
Mm-hmm.
to discuss, to have those preparation discussions. Those are different, meaning that the lawyer is starting from scratch,
Yeah.
right? But when you come to us, the first thing that we do is look at the issues that apply to your separation. If there's no property item in your situation, we're not dealing with property. But if you have property, we first have to know how much property you have by compiling. Sometimes you don't even know that the things you own or the things you have access to could be part of property. So if I'm telling you on what to do, I'll just tell you the basics, which is as per the notice to disclose. We're talking now again about your tax returns, your pay stubs, your bank statements, right? Your income, your notice of assessment. If you own a corporation, your corporate finances. If you are a student, your student loan statement. That's a debt for the family.
Hmm.
Most people don't know that. Until yesterday, I had a matter where the client had no idea. She consulted with me. She's like, I told her your student loan, it belongs to you, but can I know what time you had? She told me everything. I was like, yeah, this will be part of the family debt. She's like, no way. I was
No
like,
way.
yeah, it is. It is part of family debt. But we need to look at the timing of the student loan. When did you get it? Right? Was the money used for your studies fully? Because you get student loan and then you get a grant as part of it. So we have to dissect what aspect went into your education and what aspect was a
Mm.
grant. Did you use that grant to feed the family? If you did, well, all the money went to the family and they have to pay it back, right?
Yeah.
And also that brings me to the previous discussion that we had about knowing what the other person is doing.
Yes.
Imagine you don't know your husband or your wife is taking courses and
Taking
just
courses, taking
doing,
loans
and
and
you
grants and
know,
all of those things.
exactly. They take one course today, they get tired of it, they abandon it. Tomorrow they go and take another course, and you're like, ah, I'm encouraging my husband, I'm encouraging my wife. Let's no, the money is piling up. You end up with a lot of money to pay at the end, and you have to be part of it. You cannot escape it. If you are an employee, your T4s are also important. And then again, just in terms of debt, mortgages, line of credits, car loans, family debts, any assets that is registered to you and has a debt on it, overdrafts, credit cards, it goes on and on and on. Yeah.
Wow, these are really, really insightful tips.
Mhm.
These are really, really insightful tips. You made a statement. You said when you come to us. That leads me to the next question. What if, because we have clients who cannot afford lawyers, you
Yeah.
know. So, and there is a mutual agreement between the both parties. There's a mutual agreement of, okay, let's do this. Since there's no means, we do not have the financial means of paying lawyers. Is there a way this whole process can be done outside of lawyers, or must lawyers be involved in the process?
Mhm. Well, if the parties are working together, meaning that they're cooperating and
Yeah.
then, it's not a contested process, there are resources that they can get. The first one, I'm going to go through the court system. to tell you what resources. The first one is the family counselors.
Family
This is a
council.
process that was brought in recent years. We've had something like that in the smaller towns, but when it comes to the bigger towns, we now have family counselors. What they do is one person initiates the meeting, or both parties could. They will meet with both sides and mitigate or mediate, right? If the parties are able to come to an agreement on, foundational terms, those terms are recorded and they are now sent to maybe one lawyer to draft an expanded agreement,
Okay.
which reduces costs.
Which reduces cost.
Or it could be put in a court order, which the parties can finalize with that counselor and they don't need the lawyer.
Yeah.
Another thing we have through the court is what we call resolution counsel. These are lawyers, but they're officers of the well, we're all officers of the court, but they are employed by the court or they work for the court, the courthouse. What they do is they are like middle persons between the parties. It's free. Family counselors are free as well. You do not need lawyers in those processes. The resolution council will do all the work. They will tell you exactly what to provide in terms of financial disclosure and if you are dealing with support or property, because financial disclosure becomes relevant if there is issue of child support or spousal support or property. If none of those things are applicable, you don't need financial disclosure. But the resolution council will tell you exactly what to provide. They will go through your documents and tell you what is missing. And they will follow up with both sides until the meeting happens. If the parties reach an agreement or terms of agreement, the resolution council prepares the court order, guides them until the finality of it. It's a free process. You don't need lawyers for it, right?
Okay.
Another thing that is now available is we call there's a judicial dispute resolution. That's if you're going through the Belta Court of Justice. But the issue of property is usually King's Bench. However, when it comes to the courthouse, those things are available. We also have this so I've talked of resolution council, family counselors, and then when it comes outside of the courthouse, we have the Calgary legal guardians, but they don't meet with you in person because they don't have like your information, they can't compile for you. However, I know of community mediators, which are free as well. I think in Abelder, we do have community mediators who can, mediate between both parties for free and come to some form of agreement. And I'm talking when both parties want to deal with documents, I want to, compile things. They're not just looking for advice. If you're just looking for legal advice, there are other services that will provide you with advice over the phone, but they'll not help you with documents and the actual process, right? So those are the different things. It depends on what your needs are. The parties could go to a mediator as well, even if they have to pay for it. If both parties meet with a mediator, it's cheaper because they share the costs 50-50. But then that mediator is dealing with them at the same time. It's guiding them just like a lawyer will do, but they're not having their own separate lawyers. If they reach agreement, like they come to terms of an agreement on how to divide property, on everything that they're dealing with, the mediator will also compile those fundamental terms, draft an agreement, which is expanded, and then send each party to a lawyer. And they can spend 1 or 2 hours with that lawyer to review the agreement to sign it.
Wow.
The mediator doesn't sign the agreement with them because they're supposed to be a neutral person. But those are ways to reduce cost. There is one agency called Fairway Divorce Solutions. That is one of the prominent ones. They are an agency. They're not lawyers. What they do is they meet with the parties, they compile everything, they prepare the agreement, they prepare the property chart, they work with both parties until an agreement is reached. They prepare the agreement, send each draft to each party's lawyer for what we call independent legal advice. At that point, you don't need to retain the lawyer. You can pay for 1 or 2 hours to review the agreement.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have that. Most resources that are available are usually for advice on what to do,
Mm-hmm.
but we lack those resources that are those free resources that are there to prepare documents with you or work with you like hand to hand on an ongoing basis, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for this insight. So, if we're having a case where it's not on a peaceful resolution basis amongst both parties, um, and we cannot afford because lawyers, you guys are expensive, and we cannot afford lawyers, right? Are we, can we work with legal aids like all through the process?
With legal aid, you first have to qualify.
Oh, you have to qualify.
Yeah, legal aid is an independent institution. I'll use that word because they have their own internal process. Um, you have to contact them. You have to go through the assessment process. And then if you qualify or you're approved, they will notify you that you've been approved. They will ask you if you have a lawyer in mind that you want your certificate of representation to go to. If you do, they'll send it to that particular lawyer. But the trick is not all lawyers accept legal aid certificates because it's paid at a discounted rate, right?
Mhm.
So if the lawyer does accept legal aid certificate, they will accept your certificate, which means that you must have had a prior discussion with them. If you don't have any particular lawyer in mind, there's a legal aid platform. The lawyers that interact with legal aid, and one of them, there's a platform where if a certificate is published, we will see it. If it's something you want to take, you accept it. If you don't want to, you reject it. It goes back out and somebody else will pick it up. Whoever picks up the certificate and accepts it becomes your lawyer. And they represent you until your matter is finished.
Oh.
But but legal aid certificates, they come with a certain amount of assigned hours. It could
Mhm.
be 20, 10, 15, 25. I think the most you can, please don't quote me on this, but I think
Yeah.
the most you could get is either 25 or 30 hours, which means that if a lawyer picks up your certificate and say you have 20 hours assigned by legal aid, that lawyer has to be very careful as to how they manage that time. And you also have to be careful as to all the things that you want to share. Some things are not relevant, which is
Yeah.
why it's important to listen to counsel. If you have a lawyer, try to listen to them. You might want to put out all the dirt and background and what his ancestors or her ancestors did to you. It's not relevant to resolving your issues because at the end of the day, the court can look at an 8-page affidavit of 100 paragraphs, and only 2 of those paragraphs
Yeah.
are relevant to what you're looking to resolve, which means that you would have spent a lot of money and a lot of time just to entertain people.
Hmm.
So the lawyer is looking at that 20 hours and is trying to work within that 20 hours. Because if you run out of the 20 hours, there has to be another assessment. The lawyer has to apply back to legal aid to increase your hours, which could be rejected or approved. So there's no guarantee, right?
Hmm.
There's still like a restraint or limitation to it.
Yeah.
And if the lawyer's hours or request for additional hours is not approved, well, they cannot represent you because they're not going to get paid by legal aid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
looks like a very detailed process,
it
but I
is.
think
It is.
with guidance, if people have the right guidance, they could, assess the services. And even if you have to assess lawyers, get your facts from what you've said. Get your facts, get what is important for your case, because when you dive into so many waters, it becomes difficult. Time is money, and at the end of the day, you might not get quality for what you want. That's what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah. So
okay.
sorry. So for those individuals who have ever done a consultation with me, I am generous with information that I give you.
Yeah, yeah,
Because at the end of the day, if you want to retain me, you will retain me. And if you do not, you won't, right? Gatekeeping is not my style. I will give you access to all the resources that I think could possibly be helpful to you, depending on your financial circumstances. And if you try to access them, but it doesn't work out, then you could decide on your last resort. But if you're thinking you could need legal aid, it's very easy. Google them, phone them, go through the process. Don't overthink it. At the end of the day, it's either a yes or a no. If you feel like you just need a quick legal advice on something that you're trying to do and you need it like right away or within the next 72 hours, phone Calgary Legal Guardians. They are there. They will book you on a telephone advice clinic thing for up to 45 minutes. That's why we do things like this, these kind of platforms to tell
yeah.
you, phone these people. Don't think it. Let them tell you exactly how they work, right? Most
Yeah.
lawyers don't know how legal aid work. Some of them have never even heard of legal aid. And you can't blame them. If they don't interact with legal aid, why would they know about legal aid? Yeah.
I just put it in
Um,
there on the chat.
yeah,
Calgary Legal Guardians for
Calgary
anyone.
Legal Guardians, yeah.
Yes.
And there's pro bono Abelda as well.
Oh, pro bono abata.
Yeah.
I'll
So there's
just
pro
put it
bono
in
Abelda,
there.
there's legal aid Abelda, there's Calgary Legal Guardians.
Okay, there is a lot now.
Yeah, there's Resolution Council, and then at the courthouse there's Resolution Services on the fifth floor of the courthouse, Calgary
Mm,
Courthouse. They are more flexible, and then we have the family counselors as well.
yeah, so
Even
many.
on court documents, they are listed. Those services are usually listed on court documents.
Wow, thank you so much. We just have 7 more minutes, and then we're done. I'll just ask one more question before we finalize, because at that point, like you said, finances is most like a very huge part of property division. In a case where parties disagree to reveal the value of a major asset, right?
Mhm.
What do you do in such a situation?
Okay. Now, sorry, my eyes hurt.
Yeah.
There are situations where parties have a lot of assets of huge values. We're not talking hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
thousands, we're talking into the millions,
Mm-hmm.
which means that those assets have to be approached in a very expertized way, right? We're not just the lawyer is not just dealing with it themselves, because most lawyers, as much as we are knowledgeable on what constitutes property and how to compile and divide property, most times we don't know how to calculate property value. It goes into accounting. It goes into property valuations, which is not our area of expertise. So if the parties have extensive property with huge values or things that need expert involvement, we have different firms or companies in Calgary who can evaluate a property and determine what the actual value is, after considering any applicable taxes. We
Yeah.
use those things. They prepare a report and then we rely on the report. At that point, the lawyer is not figuring out, oh, if I have to deduct this. No, I'm not very good at math. So I don't want to go through and determine whether tax times this. No. So some of those services, we need them. The accountants are also very helpful. If you are a business person or you have an accountant that is able to break down the value of things, it helps as well. It reduces the time and the stress of doing it with your lawyer or your lawyer charging you a lot of money for doing it. If you need somebody, there's income valuation as well. There are companies that evaluate your income to determine what your average income will be. This is particularly for self-employed. If somebody has their own business, nobody's paying them, they are paying themselves, which means I can pay myself 2,000 tomorrow, and
Mm-hmm.
then next year I can pay myself 500,000. So
Yeah.
which one is my income? Which one are you going to use to calculate spousal support or child support?
Mm-hmm.
At that point, we take an expert or we retain an expert who is going to go average of maybe 5 years or 7 years to calculate or look at all the incomes that the revenue that you had over those years, including the revenues that your business had, to determine on average what you're likely to make. And that is the income that is used on a go forward basis, right?
Okay.
In determining property value for real estate property, we have appraisals. If you're planning to separate or you think again that the conversation could be going in that direction, start looking at companies that do appraisals for property. Appraisals will give you a close to accurate value compared to what we call a comparative market analysis. A comparative market analysis, we acronym it CMA, it gives you a projection based on what the surrounding property sold for, but it's not accurate. It doesn't take into, most times it doesn't take into consideration like internal renovations or structures that makes your property unique. Pay an appraisal, you could pay between 500 to 2,000 depending on the size of your property. Once an appraisal report is prepared, you know what the value is. It's easy to divide. If both parties are working together, they can do one appraisal and share the cost. But if they're fighting, one person can do it, and if the other person doesn't agree, they can get a second appraisal for a second opinion. That is allowed.
Wow.
But they should not go and connive with somebody to make the property
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
or make it higher just to get an advantage. Because at the end of the day, those experts are not going to side with you. They have their licenses on the line. We will
Mm.
question them, and they could be called to a trial. Nobody's going to come to the court and sit on the witness stand to lie for
To
you
lie for
just
you.
because you are going to get an advantage. If they lose their license, are you going to give them a new job? No.
Yeah.
So that's why expert opinion is important. I don't want a realtor that is your brother or your cousin. If a client tells me that, oh, I have a friend or a relative who is an expert that was supposed to use, I'm like, please keep them out of this, because there's no way you're going to use somebody that is close to you and then expect the other person to just openly accept the report.
Yeah.
That human brain is already telling them
Yeah.
that there is something fishy.
There's something fishy going on.
Keep all your family members out of this. Tell your cousin who is a realtor that unfortunately he cannot sell your house because this matter is hot. Let's
Mm-hmm.
look for a neutral realtor. What we'll do is, if the parties are fighting, but they have to sell properties, right? Meaning one person is disagreeing, the other person wants it, we bring an application, let the court make a determination. If one person says, well, I'm not going to do anything anyway because I don't want to sell, but then the court determines that it's appropriate to sell, we'll get a court order, we would dispense with the other person's signature, meaning that the person who got the court order can hire the realtor, sell the property, register all the documents to land titles, but they have to keep the money. For property value, if there's a dispute as to how much a property value is, get a second opinion. If there's a huge difference between both reports, then there's a problem. We can now, bring an application to say, okay, this party A is at 500,000 for, the stock, but party B believes that the stock is at 650. That's 150,000 difference.
Mm-hmm.
So the court will have to intervene at that point. But if it's a difference of you're at 500 for the value and this person is at 505, it's a 5,000
Yeah. Yeah.
difference, which is closer. It's a case by case thing. But most times people don't agree, which is why family lawyers are very busy. There's always a dispute about something. Another thing that we must note about property is you cannot piecemeal it. Every property forms part of the process, which means we're not dealing with the home today and dealing with the stocks tomorrow. Even if we're dealing with the home today, it's only to either sell it because the mortgage is up or the parties cannot pay. But when it comes to the money from the home, it has to be kept until the matter is finished. So the existence of the property is not the problem. The value of the property is.
It is, yeah.
If somebody has sold property because they're suspecting that you guys are going to separate, say, they started suspecting in November last year that there might be a separation. So they're selling things, transferring things. Well, they're going to answer for it. And if they sold a property for, 100,000, but they never shared it with the other person, that 100,000 means that the one person had 50, the other person had 50, and you did not give me my own 50. So that 50 has to come out from something that is now there.
Yeah, that's now, yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes you see people when property is divided, nobody's smiling because the person who thought they had been selling things and transferring to Nigeria and transferring to their cousin, transferring to Cameroon. Oh, I'm going to hide this, dash my girlfriend this, dash my boyfriend this. We are going FBI. You have forensic accountants, they will dig. They will know what you sent are even buried under the ground because we need to know it. And then we are going to use any things that were disposed of without the other person's consent or anything that the other person did not share in. We're going to bring those values to the present and we're going to make an adjustment to the existing property values. That people who have $2 million in value, but one person ends up with nothing because they've been doing things during the marriage.
Yeah.
Thinking that, it's within their control. You don't have any say. No, everybody has a say because it's going to come back. And that's the job of the lawyer. You can't escape it.
They can't escape it. Wow, really, I want to thank you, Barrister, for such an amazing and interesting conversation. We've had been expecting questions, but I really hope that our question and answer session today has really helped people that have come in here with their thoughts and why they're going through what they're going through and how to go about it. And I'm also hopeful that the resources that we've shared will help somebody today. So really, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity, for clearing your schedule to be here with us. I'm just going to give a summary of everything, just a bit summary I was noting down because I need this information myself, right? From all that we've discussed today, few important points for everyone is that preparation is key. Gathering financial and property information is very key and it's going to make a significant difference in the whole process. Full financial disclosure is critical to ensuring fair property division. Understanding how pensions, your investments, your debts are handled, they are very critical. And so you should be open in your relationship. You should be aware of what's going on. Not all property is treated the same. With some items, there are exemptions, and she listed out some exemptions, gifts, and that is if you have evidence and there's enough to show that they're gifts to you.
Inheritance as well.
Oh, inheritance. Yes, that's another strong one. Inheritance. Yeah. So we also said it's important to be aware of the possibility of hidden assets, but you should have evidences to prove that these assets exist. Most importantly, we said there are legal options and resources available. And she gave out some, which we put in the chat session. And she also said if the couples agree, there are also other means of going about it. Family counselors, resolution centers, and all of that. A lot of information. Thank you so much. I just overall today's session highlights the importance of being informed. If you're not informed, it's what I've gotten from here today is instead of asking people, you just ask people randomly, people who do not have that information to give to you. It's very vital that we ask the right people. When we ask the right people, we'll get the best guidance. I also want to put out there that Ruth House is very much involved in helping and supporting the community for Black people. Our doors are always open to family matters, mediation, resolution. We want to see as much as possible how we can end the crisis of the issues of divorce and separation. And even when there is no way out, we are ready to support families to see how they can still have healthy lives how kids can still have their lives back, even with these issues going on. We have programs, Sisterhood Connects, the Brotherhood Connect, to help discuss parenting, serious issues that affect our relationships. And we have counselors with us here that open their doors to offer free counseling to you if you have troubling issues that are bothering you in your marriage and your relationship as a whole. Please tell a friend to tell a friend what we do as a community, and we're always open. Our door is always open 24 hours a day. Thank you, Barrister Lucy. I'll let you go now, and we'll end the session now. Hopefully, when we have another, of course, we'll always call on you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. So one thing that I'll say is that we are in a system where a lot of information is available on even through the courts itself. The intention of our court system is to enable individuals to address litigation or processes by themselves and be able to afford it. Affordability is a good intention by the legal system. Access to justice is important as well, upholding the rule of law, which is why if you go to the Court of King's Bench, if you just Google it, it has all the breakdown. You'll be shocked at how much you can do just going through that website with all the documents, all the directions. You have step-by-step directions that will take you from phase 1 to phase 10 of your divorce and get your divorce judgment without needing the involvement of a lawyer. But people need to know where those things are. And I do appreciate Ruth's House for doing this for all these years, because when people have that information, they can, mitigate the financial hardship. If you are thinking that your relationship or marriage could be going in a direction that is not favorable, start saving some money. Legal services are very expensive. We cannot change that. The economy is always going to, change and adjust. But it is very sad to see someone who has a really good claim for support or property, and the only thing that is stopping them from making that claim go through very quickly is the lack of finances to afford a lawyer, or because legal aid is taking 8 weeks to get back to you, right? Those services that are free most time have a time constraint to them.
Yeah.
So as much as we have those free resources, we cannot also ignore the fact that most of them come with delays. Everybody needs it. How many people is legal aid going to represent? It takes time for them to get back to you. So in the meantime, what are you doing? Start saving money. I'm an advocate for financial independence. In recent times, we have seen how mostly women, I'll use women as an example, because majority of the time, women are the ones that are disadvantaged when it comes to financial resources in a relationship. We've seen how that has impacted the way that we move forward. If you're married, you have to put aside something for a rainy day. That rainy day could be a separation. And if you can have a lawyer represent your claim, you could get a lot of things out of this. I've seen people say, I can't afford it, but they have somebody who is able to pay them $7,000 in spousal support because they have that claim is that good. But they cannot afford to pay that lawyer right now. And most lawyers don't take contingency on family law matters. So it's not like I'm going to go in for you, you pay me after. So those are the preparations or preparatory steps that you have to start taking. Think long term. Nobody expects to separate, but it happens. What do? You put aside resources so that if it comes to that point, something that you help to build is not something you start fighting for to establish your entitlement. If you're married to someone for 20 years, 30, 40 years, and you now have to spend thousands of dollars to convince that person that they need to pay you support or that you should get a percentage of the property, it is sad. because
Yeah.
you were there, you were part of that process. But that's the system that we live in. You have to go through it in order to establish your case, right? So when you talk of preparations, money is part one. We need money every day, and then put together all the resources, start knowing things, start looking into statements, those letters that are coming into the house that you're ignoring. It could be something that is useful to your claim. Make photocopies of them. Don't, I mean, go FBI. You're responsible for it anyway. If your husband owes 50K, the bank is coming after you. So you want to know those things. Don't be nonchalant in your relationship or your marriage. This is not marriage advice, but from what I've seen professionally, I feel like people need to step up in terms of knowing things and getting involved in the day-to-day of their relationships, because the consequences are there whether or not we want it. And when it gets to the point, there is no way you're telling the justice that, oh, I did not know, oh, he kept me out of it, because the law doesn't take that as an excuse,
Yeah.
right? So protect yourself. By protecting yourself is by knowing, getting involved, asking questions, keeping track. I'm not saying that police anybody, but be involved to an extent that is needed or relevant in the event that you don't find yourself lacking or ending up in a shelter because you're being kicked out of a house that is you are supposed to be kicking the other person out. That is knowledge. Knowledge is knowing that if something happens, what about my circumstances give me an advantage? Let somebody not kick you out of the house when they are not supposed to, when they are the ones who are supposed to be leaving that house for you. But you don't know that those are your rights and you cannot enforce them. Let somebody not tell you you're not going to get anything, or I'm going to give this property to my brother and you have nothing to do about it. When no, they can't do it. And then you're thinking, oh, it's tradition. No, there's no tradition like that. It's you both together. Anything that was acquired during your relationship belongs to you two. And please don't be hiding things from each other. Everyone has an entitlement, because when you find out that all the properties you've been selling and transferring to relatives was belonging to your wife 50%, and now you have to adjust those credits to her, you are, well, we're going to sell everything you have to pay her that money. So
Thank you so much.
thank you again, Ogosa,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
hosting
All right.
this. Yeah.
All right. So this session has come to a close. Okay, thank you, Naomi, to Sisters. What an amazing and educative session. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, it's bye for now from Ruth House. Thank you, everybody.